The meeting of mockery. The grand assembly hall of the stellar accord buzzed with energy, its vast expanse glowing with 1,000 bioluminescent hues that marked the alien dignitaries seated in tiered rows. Representatives from every corner of the galaxy had gathered, their intricate garments shimmering in a dance of color and light. In stark contrast, Commander Elias Hunt stood alone at the podium, his dark blue Earth uniform devoid of ornamentation. The simplicity of his attire seemed to mock the opulence around him, but Elias's expression remained resolute. "Honorable members of the Stellar Accord," Elias began, his voice steady, projecting across the cavernous hall. "Earth extends its gratitude for your consideration of our petition to join your esteemed alliance. We come seeking cooperation, mutual growth, and—" A ripple of murmured amusement cut through his words, followed by an outright laugh from a towering insectoid representative. It was Zerk Thal of the Tech Core Dominion, his multifaceted eyes gleaming with disdain. "Cooperation." Zerk clicked in his native tongue before his translator chimed in. "Your species, with its patchwork ships and primitive technology, seeks cooperation with us." Absurd. The laughter spread like wildfire. Elias let it wash over him, his posture unyielding. He had expected this. Earth's analysts had predicted precisely how this meeting would unfold. "To even consider Earth's petition," added Vranulos, a crystalline being from the core worlds, "is an act of charity. Your species barely qualifies as a spacefaring civilization. No cloaking technology, no advanced energy shielding. And your fleet." She gestured, triggering a hologram of Earth's most advanced ship. Its utilitarian design looked crude compared to the sleek, organic curves of alien vessels. "Is painfully unremarkable." The assembly roared with laughter, bioluminescent patterns pulsating in their equivalent of mockery. Elias remained silent, his expression unreadable. Beneath the podium, his hand rested on a concealed interface. With a subtle touch, he transmitted a coded message to a ship orbiting far beyond the assembly's detection grid. "Message sent. Phase 1 underway. Continue observing." Once the laughter subsided, Elias spoke again, his voice calm but firm. "Honorable representatives, Earth may lack the elegance and refinement of your civilizations, but we possess something that can't be measured by technology alone." "Oh," scoffed Zerk Thal. "And what might that be?" "Optimism. Adaptability," Elias replied, locking eyes with the insectoid. "And determination." The room fell into a quiet hum. The ambassador of the Ishari, a serpentine species known for their sharp intellect, slithered forward, her elongated frame coiled gracefully around her elevated platform. "Commander Hunt, adaptability is a fine trait, but the galaxy is not a kind tutor. If Earth seeks entry into the Stellar Accord, it must prove its worth. Perhaps a restricted status might allow your species to observe and learn." A murmur of agreement rippled through the assembly. Elias nodded slightly. "We appreciate your willingness to give Earth the opportunity, even on limited terms. We shall endeavor to prove our value." He stepped back, signaling the end of his address. As he walked toward the exit, the laughter resumed, quieter this time, but still filled with derision. Elias ignored it, his mind focused on the next phase of Earth's plan. 3 months later, from the observation deck of the Erebus, Elias watched the silent void of space. The flagship of Earth's covert fleet was a marvel of ingenuity, its hull cloaked by experimental quantum displacement fields that rendered it invisible to even the most advanced sensors. Behind it, dozens of similar vessels floated unseen, a hidden armada poised in the shadow of the Stellar Accord's most critical trade routes. "Commander Hunt," a voice crackled through his communicator. It was Lieutenant Ariatovak, the fleet's operations officer. "Our scouts have intercepted another broadcast. The Accord is sending investigators to the abandoned colonies along the rim." Elias smirked. The plan was working perfectly. Months earlier, Earth had begun losing colonies, leaving behind only ghost towns and empty settlements. In reality, the inhabitants were safely evacuated aboard cloaked ships, relocated to secret outposts. To the Accord, it appeared as though humanity was suffering a series of mysterious disappearances, a calculated ruse to lull them into complacency. "Good," Elias replied. "Let them chase shadows." Tovak hesitated. "Do you think they'll ever suspect the truth?" Elias turned from the viewport, his gaze steady. "Eventually. But by the time they realize what we're capable of, it will be too late." A sharp ping interrupted their conversation. Aria's voice grew urgent. "Commander, we're detecting movement near the outer rim. It's Accord patrol ships." Elias's smirk faded. "How many?" "3, sir. Likely a reconnaissance mission." Elias clenched his fists. The cloaked fleet was undetectable, but a single misstep could unravel months of careful deception. "Keep the ships on standby," he ordered. "No engagement unless absolutely necessary." As the patrol ships drew closer, Elias felt the weight of Earth's gamble. Humanity's survival depended on this delicate balance of secrecy and misdirection. Every move had to be precise, every risk calculated. The fleet remained silent, invisible. The Accord patrols scanned the area for hours, then departed, finding nothing. Elias exhaled, his relief tempered by resolve. "Send a message to all captains," he instructed. "The timeline remains unchanged. Phase 2 begins tomorrow." Beneath the calm exterior, Elias felt a spark of pride. Humanity had always thrived under pressure, turning obstacles into opportunities. The Stellar Accord might mock Earth's technology, but they had underestimated the species' greatest strength: the ability to adapt, to innovate, and to survive against impossible odds. Let them laugh. Soon, they would see the truth. The Ghost Fleet moves. The cold silence of space stretched infinitely as the Erebus and its sister ships drifted in their cloaked formation. The Stellar Accord might have dismissed humanity as a primitive species, but the Shadow Fleet was proof of just how wrong they were. While alien civilizations relied on photonic cloaking and brute force, Earth had taken an entirely different approach: quantum displacement. This revolutionary technology didn't just hide ships, it made them appear as though they simply didn't exist. Commander Elias Hunt stood on the bridge of the Erebus, his hands clasped behind his back. The low hum of the ship's systems was a comforting sound, a testament to human engineering. Around him, his officers worked with precision, their faces illuminated by the faint glow of holographic interfaces. The room buzzed with quiet intensity as a new phase of their operation loomed. "Status report," Elias said, his voice breaking the stillness. Lieutenant Aria Tovak stepped forward, a datapad in her hand. Her dark hair was tied back in a no-nonsense braid, and her expression was sharp with focus. "All vessels report readiness, sir. The first wave is positioned along the outer rim, just beyond Accord sensor range. The diversionary probes have been deployed." "Good." Elias nodded. The diversion was a critical piece of the plan. While the Stellar Accord investigated phantom energy signatures in the outer rim, the Ghost Fleet would strike where they least expected, deep within their protected trade routes. A strategic gamble. "Do you think they'll buy it?" Aria asked, lowering her voice so only Elias could hear. "The bait feels too obvious." Elias turned to face her, his expression calm but intense. "The Stellar Accord's arrogance blinds them. They'll assume any activity on the rim is a desperate human attempt to recover lost colonies. They'll never consider that we might be capable of attacking their core trade lanes." Aria frowned, but nodded. She trusted Elias. He had been the architect of Earth's stealth program, guiding their transition from underestimated underdog to a formidable hidden force. Still, the stakes were unimaginably high. If even one piece of their deception faltered, the Accord's retribution would be swift and merciless. "Commander," another voice chimed in from the communication station. "We've intercepted a new transmission from the Accord. It's marked urgent." "Let's hear it," Elias ordered. A moment later, The voice of an alien ambassador filled the bridge, translated into perfect English by the Erebus systems. To all member states of the Stellar Accord, recent disturbances along the outer rim suggest continued instability in human territories. We urge caution but remain confident that these issues pose no threat to Accord interests. Investigative teams are en route to assess the situation. Elias smirked. Predictable. Area raised an eyebrow. They're not even concerned. That's the point, Elias said, his tone carrying a hint of satisfaction. They're so confident in their superiority, they can't imagine humanity as a credible threat. That overconfidence will be their undoing. The first strike. As the intercepted message faded, the mood on the bridge shifted. The time for strategy and preparation was over. Now came action. Activate Phase 2, Elias commanded. All ships, engage silent propulsion. Target coordinates are locked. Across the fleet, quantum displacement fields shimmered faintly as the ghost ships began to move. Each vessel's engine was tuned to minimize emissions, making them effectively invisible to even the most advanced Accord sensors. It was a masterstroke of engineering, human ingenuity distilled into a single, brilliant system. Minutes later, the Erebus reached its target zone, a heavily trafficked trade corridor connecting two core worlds of the Stellar Accord. Elias studied the holographic display in front of him. Dozens of alien cargo ships moved through the corridor, escorted by a modest security detail. The convoy was unguarded enough to seem unimportant, but vital enough to send a message. "Commander, all ships are in position," Area reported. Her voice carried a sharp edge of anticipation. Elias stared at the convoy for a moment longer before issuing the command. "Engage." In an instant, the ghost fleet sprang to life. The Erebus fired its first salvo, a volley of EMP bursts designed to disable the convoy's escorts without causing permanent damage. Other ships followed suit, their attacks precise and calculated. The alien cargo ships were left defenseless, their systems flickering and failing as the human vessels revealed themselves for the first time. The Erebus's bridge erupted in activity as officers coordinated the assault. "Target neutralized," one called out. "No casualties reported." "Cargo vessels secured," another added. Elias allowed himself a brief moment of satisfaction. The mission was going perfectly, but he knew this was just the beginning. The Stellar Accord would not take this humiliation lightly. "Deploy the retrieval teams," Elias ordered, "and transmit the signal to Earth. Let them know Phase 2 is complete." The Accord reacts. Light years away in the glittering halls of the Accord's Central Command, the news of the attack hit like a thunderbolt. Ambassador Vranulos, the crystalline representative who had mocked Earth so freely, stared at the report in disbelief. "This can't be possible," she muttered, her voice tinged with both anger and confusion. "Humans don't have the technology for an operation like this." "And yet," replied Zerkthal, his insectoid frame rigid with tension, "it seems they do." The convoy's escorts reported being overwhelmed by cloaked ships. "Cloaked ships, Vren." From humans. Vren's crystalline surface dimmed, a sign of her unease. "What do we do?" "We retaliate," Zerk hissed. "They must be taught the cost of defying the Accord." Humanity's gamut. Back aboard the Erebus, Elias watched as the retrieval teams completed their work. The captured cargo vessels would be dismantled and studied, their contents repurposed to strengthen Earth's position. But more importantly, the attack sent a clear message. Humanity was not to be underestimated. "Commander," Area said, stepping beside him, "the Accord will come after us for this." Elias nodded. "Let them. We've been playing their game for too long. Now it's time to show them what we're capable of." As the ghost fleet slipped back into the shadows, Elias felt a surge of pride. Earth was no longer a laughingstock. The galaxy had underestimated humanity for the last time. The seeds of rebellion. The Stellar Accord's towering council spire, located on the gleaming world of Zinara, pulsed with frenetic energy. Rumors of the devastating attack on the Accord's trade convoy had spread faster than any official communique. Representatives from hundreds of worlds filled the chamber, their voices raised in confusion and fury. The humans, those primitive, laughable newcomers, had somehow managed to cripple a convoy in one of the most secure regions of Accord space. Ambassador Vrenulos, the crystalline envoy from the core worlds, stood at the center podium, her once brilliant surface dimmed with worry, a faint crack forming along her otherwise flawless structure. She addressed the room, her tone laced with both disbelief and frustration. This unprecedented act of aggression must be answered swiftly and decisively, she declared, her crystalline voice resonating through the hall. The humans have defied the Accord's trust. Their attack on our convoy is an act of war. The chamber erupted in noise, representatives hissing, clicking, and chittering in their native tongues. Among the chaos, one voice rose in counterpoint, a deep, resonant sound that silenced the room like a crack of thunder. "You call it aggression, Vren," said Kal Shora, the imposing, feline-like representative of the Midrim coalition. His golden fur shimmered as he stepped forward, his predatory eyes narrowing. "But I call it desperation. Did we not mock them at their petition? Did we not cast them to the edges of our alliance, treating them as less than equals?" Vren's form brightened angrily, refracting light in jagged patterns. Desperation or not, their actions threaten the stability of the Accord. Kal's lips curled into a sardonic grin. "Perhaps they threaten your stability, but the rest of us have long grown tired of your core world arrogance. Perhaps these humans offer us another way, a fissure in the alliance." As the argument raged on in the council spire, whispers of discontent began spreading through the Stellar Accord's member states. For centuries, the core worlds had dominated the Accord, their advanced technologies and wealth ensuring their control over policy and resources. The Midrim and Rim worlds, meanwhile, were left to fend for themselves, their voices drowned out by the glittering elite. The attack on the convoy was more than just a military strike. It was a symbol of defiance. It showed that the seemingly invincible Accord was vulnerable. And for the downtrodden members of the Alliance, it sparked an idea long thought impossible: rebellion, the rebels' emissary. Light years away, deep in a hidden asteroid base, Commander Elias Hunt studied a holographic projection of the council spire. The argument within was being streamed in real time, courtesy of an intelligence probe cloaked in the chamber's rafters. As he watched the growing divide among the representatives, a subtle smile tugged at his lips. "They're fracturing," he murmured. "Not enough yet," said Arya Tovak, stepping into the room. She placed a datapad on the table in front of him. "But it's starting. We've intercepted communications from 2 Midrim worlds. They're requesting contact." Elias turned, his expression sharpening. "They're reaching out to us." Arya nodded. "Unofficially, they want to discuss terms of cooperation. It seems not everyone in the Accord is eager to see humanity crushed." For a moment, Elias said nothing, his mind racing. This was an unexpected development, but a welcome one. If the Midrim worlds were willing to align with Earth, even covertly, it could tip the balance of power in their favor. "Set up the meeting," he said finally. "But take every precaution. If this is a trap, we need to be ready." The Accord strikes back. Back on Zanara, Vrenulos paced the private chambers of the core world's delegation. The walls glowed faintly, a calming bioluminescent blue, but she felt no peace. Her crystalline surface was now marred by cracks, an outward manifestation of the pressure she felt. The humans had embarrassed her, and worse, they had emboldened dissent within the Accord. "This cannot stand," she hissed, addressing a shadowy figure seated across the room. "The humans must be made an example of. If we allow them to continue—" "They will continue," interrupted the figure, its form obscured by a dark cloak. Its voice was soft but chilling, like wind through a desolate canyon. "And so will the rebellion." Vren stiffened. "You speak as if they're unstoppable." The figure leaned forward, revealing the sharp, angular features of an Ishari operative. Their serpentine species was known for their intelligence and ruthlessness. "They are stoppable," the operative said, "but not through brute force. Humanity thrives under direct pressure. Their history is full of examples. No, Ambassador, we must be subtle." "Subtle," Vren snapped. "They attacked our convoy. And now their allies will reveal themselves," the Ishari countered. "Strike their sympathizers, and you will crush their spirit before it grows." Vren considered the words, her anger cooling into icy resolve. "Very well. Begin your operations, but make no mistakes." The Ishari inclined their head and slithered into the shadows, leaving Vren alone with her thoughts. The Shadow Alliance. On the hidden asteroid base, Elias Hunt sat at a dimly lit table across from a feline-like envoy from the Midram Coalition. Kel Shora had arrived alone, his movements graceful and deliberate. Despite his imposing presence, he radiated a quiet calm, his golden eyes appraising Elias with interest. "You've made quite the impression on the Accord," Kel said, his voice a low rumble. "And quite the gamble. Do you think your people can truly withstand their wrath?" Elias met his gaze evenly. "We don't need to withstand it. We need to redirect it. Their overconfidence is our weapon." Kel chuckled, the sound rich and warm. "You remind me of my people, Commander. We, too, were underestimated once. That was before the core worlds realized how dangerous a cornered predator can be." "Then you understand why we're fighting," Elias said. "The Accord doesn't protect us. It exploits us. Together, we can change that." Cal's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "Perhaps. But trust is earned, Commander. My people won't risk open rebellion without proof of your commitment." "You'll have it," Elias replied. "When the time comes, you'll see that humanity doesn't just survive. We adapt, we innovate, and we endure." Kel rose, his movements fluid. "Very well. I'll relay your message. But know this. If you fail, the Accord's vengeance will fall on all of us." Elias nodded, watching as Kel departed. He knew the stakes were higher than ever. Humanity's fight was no longer just for survival. It was for the future of an entire galaxy. A new alliance. As the Shadow Fleet prepared for its next operation, whispers of rebellion grew louder across the stellar Accord. For the first time, humanity wasn't fighting alone. And in the dark corners of space, alliances were being forged that would change the balance of power forever. The trap is set. The vast, glittering nebula known as the Veil of Asteris surrounded the convoy of Midram supply ships like a cosmic tapestry. Its swirling tendrils of dust and light created a perfect backdrop for what was about to unfold. Hidden within this vibrant chaos, the ghost fleet of Earth lay in silent wait, cloaked and undetectable. The trap was set, and humanity was ready to spring it. Commander Elias Hunt stood on the bridge of the Erebus, his hands clasped tightly behind his back. The weight of the operation pressed heavily on him, but his expression remained calm. This wasn't just an attack, it was a message. The Stellar Accord needed to understand that humanity was no longer the easy prey they thought it to be. "Status?" Elias asked, his voice breaking the tense silence. Lieutenant Arya Tovak, standing beside the tactical console, responded swiftly. "The convoy is on schedule, sir. No signs of additional escorts or reinforcements. And our allies? They're holding position in the shadow of the nebula. Kel Shored's ships are ready to engage if needed." Elias nodded. The inclusion of Kel's Midram forces had been a gamble, but one he was willing to take. Their cooperation was fragile, built on mutual necessity rather than trust. But if this mission succeeded, it would solidify humanity's place as more than just a desperate underdog. The perfect ambush. The convoy entered the trap zone, its formation tight but vulnerable. The Midram supply ships were escorted by a small contingent of Accord patrol vessels, their sleek designs glowing faintly against the nebula's brilliance. To an untrained observer, It seemed like a routine supply run. But to the Ghost Fleet, it was an opportunity. Target locks established, Area reported. Her voice was steady, but Elias could sense the tension beneath it. All ships standing by. Elias took a moment to study the holographic display. Each of the convoy ships was marked in real time, their movements tracked by Earth's advanced quantum sensors. This technology, human ingenuity at its finest, allowed the Ghost Fleet to strike with precision. "Begin the operation," Elias commanded. The Ghost Fleet moved as one, their cloaked ships slipping into position around the convoy like predators encircling their prey. The first strike came without warning, a concentrated burst of EMP pulses that disabled the patrol vessel's shields and weapon systems in seconds. Before the Accord ships could respond, the Ghost Fleet revealed itself, firing coordinated volleys that crippled their engines. Panic erupted among the convoy. Supply ships scrambled to retreat, their escorts rendered useless. But the Ghost Fleet was relentless. Within minutes, the convoy's fate was sealed. Every ship was disabled, its crew forced to surrender. Cal's doubts. As the battle unfolded, Cal Shora watched from the bridge of his own vessel, the Fang of Dawn. The feline-like commander observed the Ghost Fleet's precision with a mixture of admiration and unease. Humans were proving themselves far more capable than he had anticipated. Their technology, though unconventional, was frighteningly effective. "Your thoughts, sir?" asked one of Cal's officers, a lean reptilian figure with sharp eyes. Cal's golden fur rippled slightly, a sign of his unease. The humans fight with the desperation of a cornered predator, but there's something else, something unsettling about their tactics. They're not just fighting to survive. They're fighting to win. The officer tilted his head. "Isn't that what we want, Commander?" To see the Accord humbled. Cal's gaze remained fixed on the battlefield. "Yes, but the Accord isn't the only force that underestimates humanity. We might be doing the same." The Accord strikes back. Far from the Vale of Asteris, in the sprawling command center of the Stellar Accord, Ambassador Vrenulos watched the battle reports with growing fury. Her crystalline form radiated harsh, jagged light, a clear sign of her distress. The convoy had been a critical supply line for the Accord's rim territories, and its loss would send shockwaves through their operations. "They're revolving," Vren muttered, her voice sharp. "Faster than we anticipated." The Isheri operative standing beside her inclined his serpentine head. "As I warned, Ambassador, humanity adapts under pressure. This is no longer a simple skirmish. They are playing a long game, and we must respond in kind." Vren turned to him, her crystalline surface dimming. "What do you suggest?" "A countermeasure," the Isheri replied. "The humans thrive in the shadows. We must force them into the light. Strike their hidden fleet directly. Reveal their hand." Vren's gaze narrowed. "And how do you propose we find them?" "Their cloaking technology is beyond anything we've seen." The Isheri's lips curled into a sinister smile. "They may be invisible, but their allies are not. The Midrim factions aiding them will lead us to their doorstep. A costly victory." Back aboard the Erebus, the mood was subdued despite the operation's success. The convoy had been captured, and its supplies were now in the hands of the Ghost Fleet. But Elias knew this was only a temporary win. The Stellar Accord would retaliate, and their response would be brutal. "Casualty report," Elias said, turning to Area. "No losses on our side," she replied. "Minimal damage to the fleet. The convoy's crew has been secured and is being debriefed." Elias nodded, but his expression remained grim. "And the Accord?" Area hesitated. "No fatalities, but the damage to their forces was extensive." Elias sighed. "They'll use this against us. We need to prepare for what's coming." The game changes. In the following days, the Ghost Fleet withdrew to a secure location, its movements carefully masked. Elias spent long hours in strategy sessions, coordinating with Cal Shora and other Midrim leaders. The alliance was growing stronger, but so were the risks. One evening, As Elias reviewed intercepted communications from the Accord, a chilling message caught his attention. It was encrypted, but Earth's intelligence teams had managed to crack it. Target: Midrim sympathizers. Priority: elimination. Elias's heart sank. The Accord wasn't just coming for humanity. They were going after their allies. He turned to Area, his voice steady but urgent. Contact Kale. Tell him the Accord is coming. As the Ghost Fleet prepared for its next move, Elias knew the stakes had never been higher. The battle for survival had become a battle for the galaxy's future, and humanity was no longer fighting alone. Betrayal in the shadows. The Midrim world of Sithara glowed softly in the darkness of space, its rings of crystalline debris shimmering with reflected starlight. On its surface, the grand city of Ashera sprawled like a web of light, its towering spires reaching skyward. Beneath the bustling exterior, however, the heart of a fragile rebellion beat quietly. Kal Shora stood in a dimly lit chamber deep within the city's underbelly, his golden eyes fixed on a holographic display of his allies. Commander Elias Hunt's image flickered slightly as the quantum signal adjusted to interference. His expression was stern, his tone sharp. "They're coming for you, Kale," Elias warned. Intercepted Accord communications confirm it. They're targeting Midrim sympathizers. Your people need to evacuate. Kal's tail flicked behind him, a telltale sign of his unease. "Evacuation is not an option," he replied, his voice low. "We can't afford to abandon Sithara. If we retreat, the Accord will label us cowards. We'll lose what little support we've gained." Elias's jaw tightened. "If you stay, they'll destroy you. This isn't about pride. It's about survival." Kal's holographic form shifted slightly as he leaned closer to the projector. "You don't understand my people, Commander. If we run now, we'll never have the chance to fight again." Elias exhaled slowly, his frustration evident. "Then let us help you. The Ghost Fleet can." Before he could finish, the signal was abruptly cut off. Static filled the air, and Kal's image dissolved into nothingness. "Commander," Lieutenant Area Tovak called out from her station aboard the Erebus. "We've lost the connection." "It's not interference. It's a deliberate jamming signal." Elias's chest tightened. They found him. The ambush. On Sithara, Kal's instincts screamed danger. A holographic emitter still glowed faintly from the now terminated signal, casting an eerie light across the chamber. His officers shifted uneasily, their weapons at the ready. "Commander," one of them said, a reptilian soldier with sharp, angular features, "we've detected multiple incoming signatures. Accord ships." Kale growled low in his throat. "How many?" "Too many," the soldier replied grimly. "Their fleet outnumbers ours 5-1. Kal's mind raced. The Accord had not only anticipated their location, but had arrived in overwhelming force. His thoughts briefly turned to Elias's warning. The humans had been right. He hated to admit it, but their foresight might have been the only thing that could have saved them. "We hold our ground," Kale said firmly. "Prepare the defense grid. If they want Sithara, they'll pay for it in blood." Above the planet, the first Accord ships breached the atmosphere, their sleek forms cutting through the night sky like blades. Plasma fire rained down on the city, targeting key infrastructure. Explosions rocked Ashara, and the once bustling metropolis descended into chaos. The Ghost Fleet arrives. Far from Sithara, aboard the Erebus, Elias Hunt watched the battle unfold through intercepted transmissions. His fist clenched as reports of civilian casualties and widespread destruction filled the airwaves. "Area," he barked, turning toward his lieutenant. "What's the fleet's status?" "All ships are operational," she replied. "We can be in orbit over Sithara within an hour if we push the engines." Elias hesitated. The Ghost Fleet's strength lay in its secrecy. Engaging directly with the Accord would risk exposing their technology and their entire operation. But as he watched the destruction on Sithara, he knew there was no choice. "Order the fleet to move," he said, his voice cold and decisive. "Silent propulsion until we reach the atmosphere. No one fires until I give the command." The Erebus and its sister ships activated their quantum displacement fields, vanishing from sensors as they made their way toward the embattled planet. For the first time, the Ghost Fleet would enter the fray directly. The cost of arrogance. On the surface of Cythera, Kal Shora and his forces fought valiantly. His soldiers, a mix of Midram rebels and local militia, held the Accord at bay in the narrow streets of Ashera. Plasma bolts lit up the night, and the air was thick with the acrid smell of burning structures. But the Accord's forces were relentless. Their advanced weaponry and sheer numbers began to overwhelm Kal's defenses. One by one, his strongholds fell, and the city's outskirts were reduced to smoldering ruins. Kal retreated to a fortified command post, his fur matted with sweat and dust. "Status," he demanded. "We've lost the eastern quadrant," his second-in-command reported. "They're closing in." Kal slammed a clawed fist onto the table. "Damn it. Where are the humans? They said they'd help." As if in answer, a distant rumble echoed through the air. Kal looked up, his sharp ears twitching. The sound grew louder, a low hum that vibrated through the ground. And then the sky lit up. The turning tide. The Ghost Fleet descended upon Cythera like avenging spirits. The Erebus led the charge, its cloaked form shedding its invisibility as it launched a barrage of EMP bursts. Accord ships in orbit flickered and died, their systems overwhelmed by the sudden assault. On the ground, Kal's forces watched in awe as Earth's ships appeared seemingly out of nowhere, their sleek, angular designs unlike anything the Accord had ever faced. Coordinated strikes targeted the Accord's command vessels, crippling their ability to coordinate the attack. Elias's voice came through Kal's comms, calm but commanding. "Kal, pull your forces back to the central district. We'll cover your retreat." Kal hesitated for only a moment before responding. "Understood. And Commander, thank you. Just make sure you survive," Elias replied. A new resolve. The battle raged on for hours, but the tide had turned. The Accord forces, caught off guard by the Ghost Fleet's intervention, faltered under the combined pressure of Earth's technology and Midram determination. By dawn, the Accord ships were in full retreat, leaving behind a devastated but unconquered Cythera. Kal stood atop the remains of a ruined spire, watching as the last of the Accord ships vanished into the atmosphere. His forces had suffered heavy losses, but they had held the line, and they hadn't done it alone. Elias's voice crackled through his comm once more. "The Accord will regroup. This was only a skirmish." Kal's golden eyes narrowed. "Then we'll be ready. Together." Elias allowed himself a small smile. Humanity and the Midram had struck a blow against the Accord, but the war was far from over. As the Ghost Fleet returned to the shadows, Elias knew the battles ahead would only grow more dangerous and more decisive. The Accord's countermove. Deep within the shimmering core world of Velfar Prime, the Stellar Accord's High Command convened in a chamber of unparalleled grandeur. Crystal panels adorned the walls, pulsating with shifting light patterns that reflected the emotional states of the representatives seated around the circular table. Yet this time, the room glowed with sharp, jagged tones of anger and humiliation. Ambassador Vrenulos stood at the center, her crystalline form darkened with tension. The recent failure at Cythera weighed heavily on her. The Accord's forces, despite their overwhelming numbers, had been routed by a seemingly invisible enemy. "They humiliated us," Vren said, her voice cutting through the tense silence. "The humans, those primitive upstarts, have crippled one of our key fleets and emboldened the Midram factions. If we don't act decisively, this rebellion will spread." Across the table, Zerk Thal of the Tech Corps Dominion clicked his mandibles in irritation. "Decisive action requires knowledge, Vren, and we are fighting shadows. Their technology defies every scanning method we've deployed. What good are our fleets if they cannot find the enemy?" A soft, serpentine voice slithered through the room. "Perhaps it is not their fleets we should target," said the HFY operative, seated in the shadows. His long, sinuous form coiled gracefully as he spoke. "The human strength lies not in their ships, but in their alliances. Break their unity, and they will crumble." Vren's crystalline surface shimmered as she processed his words. "Divide them." "Exactly," the HFY hissed. "Sow doubt among their allies, exploit their weaknesses, and when they stand alone, the shadows will have nowhere to hide." A plan of deception. Far away, aboard the Erebus, Commander Elias Hunt sat in a dimly lit strategy room with his core team. The recent victory at Cythera had bought them time, but it had also drawn the full attention of the Accord's high command. Every decision now carried even greater weight. Arya Tovak leaned against the table, her expression unreadable as she studied a series of intercepted Accord transmissions. "They're moving again, Commander, but not in the way we expected." Elias frowned. "What do you mean?" "They're not sending fleets," Arya replied. "They're sending operatives, specialized infiltration teams. Their target isn't us, it's our allies." Elias leaned back, his mind racing. The Accord had shifted tactics. Instead of engaging directly, they were now attempting to destabilize the fragile coalition humanity had built with the Midrim factions. "Cal Shora," Elias muttered. "He's their prime target." Arya nodded. "And not just Cal. We've intercepted rumors of sabotage on several Midrim worlds. Factions turning against each other, leaders disappearing, infrastructure collapsing. The Accord is trying to fracture the rebellion." Elias's expression hardened. "We can't let that happen. If the Midrim loses faith in us, this war is over." The saboteurs unmasked. On the Midrim world of Taltha Prime, a bustling trade hub critical to the rebellion, Cal Shora prowled through the shadowed corridors of his command center. The feline-like leader was on edge. Reports of sabotage had already reached his ears. Communications blackouts, unexplained explosions, and whispers of betrayal. "Status," Cal demanded as he entered the central operations room. One of his officers, a wiry reptilian with scales that shimmered faintly in the dim light, turned to him. "Saboteurs, sir. We've captured 2 in the industrial district. They were attempting to rig the primary power grid to detonate." Cal's claws flexed instinctively. "Humans." "No, sir," the officer replied. "HFY operatives, but they were carrying Midrim credentials." Cal's golden eyes narrowed. The Accord's strategy was clear. Frame the rebellion's factions for the attacks, turning allies against each other. It was a cunning plan, and one that could unravel everything if they didn't act quickly. Elias's gamble. Back aboard the Erebus, Elias received the urgent transmission from Cal. The message was terse but clear. The rebellion was being infiltrated, and trust among the factions was beginning to erode. "We need to act," Arya said, her tone firm. "If the Midrim falls apart, we'll be next." Elias nodded, his mind already formulating a plan. "We need to expose the Accord's operatives, and we need to do it publicly. If the factions see proof of the Accord's deception, it'll strengthen their resolve." "But how do we do that?" Arya asked. "The HFY are masters of stealth. They'll vanish before we can pin them down." Elias's lips curved into a thin smile. "Then we give them something they can't resist. A trap. The trap is sprung." On the barren moon of Theric, Elias orchestrated a daring gambit. Using intercepted intelligence, the Ghost Fleet created a false supply depot, supposedly housing advanced human cloaking technology. Word of the depot's location was leaked through carefully crafted channels, ensuring it reached the Accord's ears. As expected, the Accord took the bait. A team of HFY operatives arrived under the cover of darkness, their serpentine forms gliding silently across the rocky terrain. But the moment they breached the facility, the trap was sprung. Electromagnetic containment fields snapped into place, trapping the operatives in a web of energy. Within seconds, the facility's lights blazed to life, revealing Elias and his team waiting for them. "Welcome to Theric," Elias said coldly. "We've been expecting you." The Ishari hissed in fury, their sleek bodies writhing against the containment field. "You think this changes anything, human? You're already doomed." Elias stepped closer, his eyes hard. "No, but you just handed us the proof we need. The proof that united them." Within hours, the captured operatives and their equipment were paraded before the leaders of the Midram coalition. The evidence was irrefutable. Recordings of the Ishari plotting sabotage, forged documents implicating Midram factions, and weapons tagged with Accord insignias. The room buzzed with outrage as the truth sank in. Kal Shura, standing at the center of the assembly, turned to Elias. "You were right. Without this, the rebellion would have collapsed." Elias inclined his head. "The Accord's strength lies in division. Ours lies in unity. If we stand together, they can't break us." The room erupted in a chorus of agreement, the leaders pledging their renewed commitment to the cause. The rebellion, once fragile and uncertain, now stood stronger than ever. The Accord's realization. Back on Velthar Prime, Ambassador Vren Ulas received the news with a mixture of disbelief and fury. The humans had not only thwarted their sabotage, but had turned it into a rallying cry. The Ishari operative, now a holographic projection in her private chambers, hissed apologetically. "They are more cunning than we anticipated." Vren's crystalline surface darkened ominously. "Then we stop underestimating them. If subtlety has failed, we'll crush them with brute force." Her voice echoed through the chamber, cold and unyielding. The humans had won this round, but the Stellar Accord would ensure it was their last.